Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. I kept telling myself the parking garage was still just a parking garage. Concrete, rebar, oil stains, a low ceiling with red exit signs glowing through a haze of exhaust. But the sounds below us made the place feel like something else. Sirens turned to static. A helicopter chopped through the air over the hospital roof and veered off as if the pilot had weighed our building against a fuel gauge and decided there was nothing left to give. Someone laid on a horn until the battery died. That last detail stuck with me. People always think complicated problems will have complicated endings. Sometimes they just wind down to silence. My name is Ethan Cross. I am 36 years old, born in Zanesville, Ohio, and I make my living turning wrenches. I like mechanical things because they do what they are built to do if you feed them the inputs they expect. You can be tired, you can be afraid, and a torque wrench will still click at 30 foot-pounds. Engines do not take insults personally. They take air, fuel, compression, ignition, and they run. And when they don't, the cause can be found. That is how I kept my head clear in the first week after the outbreak reached Columbus. I searched for inputs and outputs. I cut noise away from signal. I told myself it was a systems problem, the way you diagnose a truck that stumbled under load. Nora found me in the hospital parking garage because she noticed what I was doing. The lower levels had turned into a maze of honking and taillights. Drivers trying to reverse up ramps, while medics shouted for people to move aside. I was at the corner of a concrete pillar, using a long pry bar to open a locked tool cabinet on the wall. She stepped into my light as I got it open. Her scrubs were under a fleece jacket, hair tied back, eyes steady. The sleeves were brown at the cuffs, not fresh. I filed that away. "Are you stealing?" she asked. There was no accusation in it. More like she wanted to understand the system in front of her. "I'm requisitioning," I said. "If I use the right word, it means I'm helping. I fix cars. They need to move, or people are going to get pinned in here." She watched me sift through the cabinet, mostly cheap sockets, a corded trouble light, a fire extinguisher rated for oil and electrical, a pry hammer with a fiberglass handle. I slung the hammer and the extinguisher. The trouble light needed power we didn't have. "I'm Nora," she said, "emergency department nurse. We can't keep anyone here. There's no oxygen in most rooms, and the generators are down to one. They need diesel." "I know a place to get some," I said, "but I need a vehicle that can carry it without making things worse." She nodded as if she had already assumed I had an answer. "My niece is upstairs. I need to bring her with me." "What's her name?" "Abby. She's 8. "Okay," I said, because it was the only answer that mattered. We moved together without discussing it, because discussing things was what everyone else was doing, and each sentence made them more stuck. I followed Nora up the stairwell, where handprints marked the paint like someone had tried to climb a riverbank. On the roof level, a small girl sat against a wall with a knapsack. She wore pink sneakers and a denim jacket with patches. She had the look of someone who had been asked to be quiet and had obeyed perfectly. When she saw Nora, she stood up and put her hand into Nora's without saying a word. "This is Ethan," Nora said, calm. "He fixes things. We're leaving." "Okay," Abby said. Her voice was thin from being used too little. "Back down." We threaded around stalled cars and people arguing through open windows. Near the ramp, a man in a surgical mask tried to push a wheelchair into the stream of vehicles. I helped him lift the front casters over a curb. The chair had no passenger. He said thank you as if he felt he should, and we kept moving. The concrete shook. For a moment I thought another helicopter had set down on the roof. Instead, a truck horn sounded at a deep pitch that vibrated the handrails. The kind of horn that said, "I am heavy and I am moving, and you should move too." We came out into the daylight, just as a Kenworth semi-truck eased up the ramp from the lower street, threaded between two stalled sedans, and stopped at the curb. It was a T680 with a raised roof sleeper, company blue under a film of dust. A young guy in a baseball cap sat in the open driver's door with one leg down and the other still in the cab, as if he hadn't decided whether to commit. "Hey," I called. "You with the company?" He looked over, wary and hopeful both. "Marcus, I was dropping at the food warehouse off 5th. Dispatch went dark. I was trying to get back on Interstate 70, but they've blocked the ramp at the short north. I thought the hospital loop might connect out." "Ambulance loop only," I said. "You're going to get trapped by the roundabout," I pointed. "But you have diesel, and I have an idea." He looked past me at Nora and Abby. Something went tight in his face that said he had family on his mind too. "I'm trying to get to Kansas City," he said. "If the highways open west, I can make it in a day and a half with this thing, 2 tops. I need to keep moving." "You'll make it farther with people who know what they're doing," I said. "You let us on, we'll help you avoid the worst of the city. In return, we get as far west as we can together. We can refuel you from the emergency tank farm here. Hospitals keep diesel for their generators. The pumps up on the pad can be backfed with a portable. I can rig it. We siphon some for 5-gallon cans, grab food, and we move." He looked at the blank hospital windows. He looked at Abby's small hand in Nora's. He looked at the Kenworth like it was the last steady thing he could control. Then he nodded. "Okay, but we don't take chances. If this turns bad, we don't stop for anyone." "I understand," I said, even though I knew that rule never holds in a story with people in it. We got moving fast, because moving slow was how you got wrapped in other people's decisions. I found the maintenance stair to the generator pad, and we passed a gurney that someone had used as a cart for cardboard boxes marked with red hazard symbols. I kept my eyes on the floor and the stair treads, because looking at the wrong thing can take minutes away you don't have. On the roof pad, the emergency generator, a big diesel unit the size of a van, sat within a chain-link fence. The day's air had that cool Ohio edge that comes before noon in early autumn, and the wind carried a burnt smell from somewhere we couldn't see. The day shift had been doing their best. The main diesel tank showed less than a quarter on the gauge taped to the side. The smaller day tank next to the generator was full, but someone had shut the feed valve. The generator hummed at a low idle that told me it was carrying only critical loads. The transfer switch panel inside the cage had duct tape labels made with a black marker. ICU, Oregon wing lights, elevators AB, pharmacy. The elevator circuit light blinked amber, which meant someone had overridden the system to keep those cars running. Without that override, the nurses would be pushing people down stairwells. Decisions on top of decisions. I picked up the maintenance shop's portable transfer pump, a simple electric unit with a handcart and hoses, and twisted the fittings until they pointed the right way. I found a spare breaker, slaved the pump into the generator's auxiliary panel using an extension cord, and listened for the whine that said the impeller was turning. The big tank supply line had a clean-out, so I bled the air until the fuel ran without bubbles. It smelled like sulfur and varnish. The filter on the pump vibrated. If we were lucky, the clog would stay put. "Where do you want it?" Nora asked, already holding a 5-gallon can in each hand. She had dropped the jacket and tied the sleeves around her waist. Her scrubs read St. Luke's in blue along the side. I would learn later that she had walked out when they'd asked her to work a 20-hour stretch without telling anyone when relief might come. 2 cans for the truck, 2 for the pickup I hope we find on the way if the semi can't go places, another for a small generator if we find one. Then we fill the Kenworth on the loop below. If we can get that main tank a little higher too, it might keep their lights on longer, but only if we have time. We worked in motion. Abby set cans at the end of the hose, flipped the caps, and set them upright when they were full with a seriousness that looked like she'd done this in some other life. I carried each can to the Kenworth and climbed to the frame rail. Bare metal felt cold in my hands. Marcus had the hood open and was checking belts, oil level, coolant overflow. He had a phablet clipped to his dash that had once told him where to go and now showed a map of the city with frozen traffic layers. He had the Citizens band radio on channel 19. and the squelch turned up. A voice hissed in and out about a jackknife trailer near the West Belt. Another voice shouted over the top. I turned the squelch down. Noise wasn't information. We ran the diesel pump until the gauge at the hospital tank ticked a little higher than where we started. I threw the main ball valve open halfway to reduce suction on the bottom sludge. You learn tricks like that in a shop. They aren't glamorous, but they keep you from dying of a mistake you should have been able to avoid. We put the tools back how we found them and pulled the chain link closed. That felt important. On the way down, the helicopter came back low. It swung across us and then away. Nora put her hand on Abby's shoulder and made herself a wall between her and the stairwell railing. The rotor downwash knocked dust in our faces. When the sound faded, we came into the garage daylight again and saw that the stream of cars had thinned. People had given up on arguing. There was a kind of quiet that felt hotter than the air. Marcus had the Kenworth idling. The airdryer puffed under the bumper. The trailer was a dry van with a roll-up door and a high cube roof. The left side bore a company name and a phone number that probably still led to hold music. He dropped the passenger step. Nora lifted Abby. I swung up last and closed the door. Where? Marcus asked, eyes forward on the corridor between concrete pillars. Out to Neal Avenue, down to the ramp, I said. If the main westbound on Interstate 70 is blocked at the short north, we'll slip south to the exit by Franklinton. If we can't get on there, we'll follow Broad and use the old ramp by the Scioto mile markers. The signs will say, I-70 West St. Louis. We take them. We took them. The Kenworth's diesel pulled us with a steady, dense sound that I have always liked. It is not the loud, brittle shout of a gasoline block. It is an iron sound, full of compression and fuel. We wove between parked cars, through a circle of people that broke like water and closed again behind us. Out on the surface streets, the city had a strange clarity. Empty sidewalks, lights stuck in a cycle because no one had told them to change, and something about the way the wind moved rappers across the pavement that made me think of Sundays after a game. The streets around the nationwide arena district were blocked with municipal trucks. Beyond them, the ramp we wanted showed green signs. West Y70 Dayton, a second sign, I-71 Cincinnati. I read them like they were lyrics to a song I had known as a kid. We went under them and were on the interstate. For the first few miles, it felt almost like a normal bad day. The lanes spread wide. The median had those tension wire cables with posts. The Kenworth ran at 50 miles per hour and then at 60. Marcus kept scanning his mirrors and the road ahead, knuckles white on the wheel. I don't like this, he said, eyes on the empty stretch. If it's this clear, it means the jam is somewhere we can't see. Then we'll see it soon enough, I said. Nora had Abby next to her and a bag of hospital snacks open between them. Abby ate a granola bar with small, slow bites. Her feet didn't touch the floor. Nora watched the shoulder and the overpasses. She had the emergency scanner app on her phone, up and tuned to the county frequencies. Some of it was dispatch talking to dispatch. Some was units asking for resupply, then not answering. I showed her how to switch to one of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration weather radio frequencies, because I knew the emergency alert system would ride on those repeaters too. A calm voice read out a civil emergency message, advising citizens to shelter, avoid travel, and expect disruption to public services west of Springfield due to mass casualty incidents and civil disorder. The phrasing of those alerts always sounded like a gentle hand on your shoulder, telling you everything would be fine as a house burned around you. We crossed the Beltway. Past Hilliard, the westbound lanes began to thicken. We fell to 40 and then to a stop, moved 20 feet, stopped again. The air took on the smell of overheated brakes, hot rubber, and diesel exhaust. Drivers had their windows open, forearms out, phones to ears. We were still in the city's gravity, and the rumor that the interstate was the way out had pulled everyone onto it. It looked like a tail of red lights that ran into the horizon. We stay in the right lane, I said. On-ramps will be jammed. If there's a gap at each ramp, we can use the shoulder to pass. But if we block an emergency vehicle, We make room. We don't take that from anyone who might still be working. Copy, Marcus said, as if he were on a radio. He slid the Kenworth over. The mirrors showed a slow river of cars next to our trailer. People looked up at us like we were the only tall thing left in a world that had gotten flattened. It took an hour to cover what should have been 10 minutes. We passed a state highway patrol cruiser on the shoulder with its rear lights on and no one inside. The hood was up. The radio antenna arced like a fishing rod. A light brown dog lay under the shade of the bumper and raised its head when we rolled by. I thought about stopping and didn't say it out loud. At a rest area near London, we finally saw a moving island of logic. A few highway workers in reflective vests directed 2 lines of vehicles into the parking lot. They held traffic with hand signals, then waved an ambulance through the break in the cable barrier toward the eastbound lanes. 2 portable light towers ran on small diesel engines. People had set up lines at the restroom doors. The vending machines had been opened with a pry bar. A woman in a red jacket stood under a picnic shelter with a megaphone that squealed each time she keyed it. We would have learned something from them if we stopped. We did not stop. Past the rest area, the traffic loosened. The interstate angled southwest. The mileage signs went. Springfield 21, Dayton 50, Indianapolis 175. The CB crackled. I adjusted the Citizens Band radio squelch so that the signal would only break when someone close spoke. A voice came through with clarity as if the speaker stood by the shoulder. If you're westbound, don't stop past mile marker 143. They come out of the cornfields at dusk. Then nothing. What marker are we at? Marcus asked. I watched the green mileposts on the right shoulder. One read 83. We're 60 miles short of where that warning matters, I said. But whoever it was sounded like he meant it. Nora shifted. They come out of the cornfields, like they wait there. They don't wait, I said, careful. They wander. They listen. People draw them. Sound draws them. Motion draws them. A person with a generator will make a beacon without knowing it. A truck stop will smell like fuel and food. If they've been drifting in drainages and tree lines, the first place they notice will be a place like that. Ab looked out the window and said very quiet, "We shouldn't be where people are." I nodded. That's right. We rolled through Springfield. The westbound exit to US Route 68 had a tangle of pickup trucks and trailers. Men moved between them carrying fuel cans. Some waved at us. One held up a sign made with cardboard and a thick marker. I-70 closed ahead, local route north. He had a look in his eyes I recognized from people who have convinced themselves of a thing because their life depends on it. Past the next rise, the interstate turned into a still picture. Every lane left, center, right, and the shoulder filled with stopped vehicles, some at angles where they had tried to change lanes, some with doors open, some with hazard lights flashing, others dead. The median cable had been cut in places, and cars had crossed. The eastbound lanes were not moving either. The only space left was the narrow ribbon of grass between the shoulder and the farm fence, and the Kenworth would sink there. "This is the bottleneck," I said. "We're not getting through this by waiting. The light is going to go soon. People will start doing loud, illogical things." "So what?" Marcus said. There was no complaint in it. He just needed the next instruction. "We make ourselves a quiet island," I said. "We get high and away from gaps. If anything moves at us, we go upward, not forward. We take everything we need with us in one pass, because we do not get a second." We put the plan into motion as if we had practiced it. Marcus nosed the Kenworth toward the shoulder until the trailer cut an angle that blocked 2 lanes behind us. He set the parking brake. The brake valves on the dash hissed. He killed the headlights, but left the marker lights on so the truck would be visible without inviting company. I handed Nora the pry hammer, the fire extinguisher, 2 5-gallon diesel cans, and a hard plastic bag with a basic first aid kit, bottled water, energy bars, and a battery lantern I had pulled from an abandoned SUV's emergency kit 2 hours earlier. She anchored Abby to her hip with a zip of her jacket sleeve through the girl's belt loop. I took the Citizens Band radio, handheld I had found in the Kenworth sleeper, clipped it to my pocket, and slung a length of nylon tow strap. We climbed the rungs welded to the trailer's rear frame and went up to the roof. The high cube roof curved slightly, but had enough flat to sit and move. The air smelled like hot paint and rubber. The sun had dropped, and the western clouds had changed to that colour that looks like steel more than sky. The cornfields beyond the fence were tall and dry, their leaves rattling. The sound had a texture. If you have ever stood in a field like that at dusk, you know it. Below us, the highway looked like a stadium parking lot after a game, except there was no laughter, and nobody had a destination to return to. A generator sputtered 3 cars ahead of our cab, and a woman yelled at someone to turn it off. A man in a reflective vest walked along the shoulder telling people there were medics up ahead, and I watched his head turn toward the field each time the stalks whispered. He did not go far. The first of them came when the light went low enough that your pupils had to do work. They did not run. They did not leap fences. They moved like people in a crowd who have forgotten where they were going. The sound of dried leaves against denim carried in the stillness. At first, the drivers below us thought they were lost stragglers. One man said, "Hey, over here," the way people have said it for 1,000 years to strangers. He stepped forward. The people from the field changed their direction without looking, as if they had been magnetized. The man's voice shifted, in a way I will not describe, because the details are less important than the result. The generator kept running until a second voice screamed for it to be shut down, and then it cut, and the sudden quiet felt like someone had opened a door. We did not move. That was our rule, because motion draws attention. We lay flat on the roof and kept our profiles low. I had already lifted the emergency release bar that disconnected the roll-up door from its lock. If anyone tried to climb the rear ladder, I could drop into the trailer and pull the others through. We would be in the dark, with only the light of our lantern if we dared. The trailer smelled like fresh produce and cardboard. If someone had asked me that morning whether I'd ever be grateful for the neutral smell of an empty food trailer, I would not have understood the question. Nora's breath was steady. Abby lay with her cheek against her aunt's arm, eyes open, watching the stars appear. In some other world, we would have shown her apps that map constellations and made a game of naming them. In this one, we counted the length of quiet between the bad sounds and used the counts to tell ourselves that the quiet was winning. Near midnight, something in the other lane went wrong. A car had inched forward onto the grass to try to move around a truck, sank and spun its tires. The driver's door opened. A man stood, swore at the sky like he wanted it to hear him, and slammed the door so hard his window cracked. The sound carried. The corn nearest his car bent as if wind had pushed it. It had not been wind. The man got back inside, locked the door, and turned the key. The engine coughed. It did not start. His dome light stayed on for a moment, then dimmed. We did not sleep in the way that helps you feel human. We went into a half place where your body keeps track and calls you back for the slightest change. Sometime in the hours before dawn, the noises shifted. The movements in the field slowed. That was our chance. I squeezed Nora's arm. She eased Abby to a sitting position. We slid to the rear, lowered into the trailer, and pulled the door down to within a foot of closed. I tied it at that height with the nylon strap and fed the strap through the latch so I could release it in one pull. Air moved through. We were in silence that felt earned. When light came through the gap, it was the pallor of morning after a long night. I cracked the door, looked both ways, and lifted it to my waist. Marcus had come down to the cab at some point with the pry hammer and was now at the foot of the ladder. He had stayed at his post and had not tried to help anyone he could not save. I did not think less of him for it. I thought more. We climbed down, moved quickly, and did not talk. The highway looked like an aftermath more than a battle. Some cars sat at angles. Some had doors open. Once or twice, I could not tell whether a person in a seat had fallen asleep or gone somewhere quieter in their mind forever. We did not look long enough to decide. That sounds cold. It was not. It was the direction of our energy toward the three of us, and the child who was counting on our choices. "We can't go forward," I said. "The jam goes to the horizon and beyond. If there is a break, it will not last long enough for us to reach it. Eastbound is no better. We need to get off this line of noise. Backroads, Nora said. She did not ask. She stated it. Backroads, I confirmed. We take county routes south, then west, then back up to I-70 if we find a quiet stretch. If we don't, we keep using roads where we can see a quarter mile in every direction and where the only things that can block them are gates or trees. We avoid places where people tried to do something organized in the last day. Those places will have made noise. And fuel? Marcus asked. We take what we can carry. Then we take more than that, I said. We never leave a can empty that we could fill. If we pass farm tanks, we take off the water with the separator and bless the simple fact that red dye in off-road diesel won't matter to anyone anymore. We carry a spare fuel filter cartridge at the cab. We plan for algae and sludge. If it clogs, we change it on the shoulder without panicking. I scavenged a few more supplies from vehicles where the owners had clearly left on foot. A blanket became a sling for extra water bottles. A toolbox gave up a length of fuel hose and a siphon bulb. We did not break into anything we didn't need. That rule kept us moving and kept us decent. I would be lying if I said it also kept us safe, because nothing kept anyone safe, but it kept us from unraveling ourselves. The driver's side mirror on the Kenworth had a small compass taped to it. East was where we had come from. West was where we said we were going. South led us along a parallel rural route that cut through small towns, whose water towers announced their names like polite introductions. South Vienna, Catawba, Choctaw Lake. We kept moving. Corn gave way to soybean fields, and then back to corn. At a four-way stop with a flashing light and no cross-traffic, we saw our first diner with a hand-painted message on the window, "Help inside." The letters were blocky and black, with trailing drips that made the sign look like it had been done in a hurry. The door stood open a few inches. I could smell fryer oil and old coffee even from the truck. "We pass it," I said. Nora looked at the window. If someone needed help, they wrote it before last night. People with a plan would have posted someone in the doorway. Whoever made that sign expected a car to pull in and stop close. They planned to meet someone halfway. Now it's just a message that works on your conscience. We passed it. 20 yards later, the alley beside the diner showed fresh tire marks, and someone stepped out from behind a dumpster with a length of pipe in his hand and a look that told me the sign had been part of a script he had been repeating. He saw our height and mass and let the pipe drop to his side. Another person, a woman with a scarf tied around her head, watched from the corner and held up a hand like a flagman who has waved and got no one to slow. I watched her in the mirror until the diner was a square in the distance. I'm not proud of the way relief and regret felt like the same thing. A mile further, a small roadside fuel stop came into view. It was not a giant interstate service centre, just a two-island gas station with a roof and a convenience store with a single glass door. A yellow sign said Diesel 2. Every pump was dark. The card readers would have needed power we did not have. But behind the building, next to a cinder block shed, sat a horizontal skid tank on steel stands with a hand crank pump and a mechanical meter. "Pull around," I said. Marcus swung the Kenworth into the back lot and set the brake. We made a bubble of awareness. Nora stood facing the road with Abby behind her legs. Marcus watched the field. I went to the tank and spun the pump handle. It resisted for a quarter turn, then started moving smooth. Diesel came out in a steady stream. I held the nozzle to smell it. Good. Not cloudy. No water came first. We filled the 5-gallon cans and added 10 gallons to the Kenworth via a funnel. We left cash on the store counter because that felt like a way to remember who we were. A man walked up the side of the road with his right arm held still, as if it hurt. He had a beard cut short, a baseball team shirt, and eyes that moved. "I'm friendly," he said before I asked. "Store owner. I locked it up when the point of sale went down yesterday. You can take what you need. Don't break the cooler doors. They jam. If you break them, the cold goes fast." "Thank you," I said. "We're moving on. Is the highway better west?" He shook his head. "It's all jam. Get off it. They tried a blockade past the county line, and it turned into a pile-up. There's a spot by mile marker 145 where the on-ramp meets from a curve. People came off fast and didn't see. That's where the worst of it is. What about the nights? The fields make sound. The sound brings them. Best thing is distance. Second best is height. Third is quiet. Noise is a promise you don't want to make. We bought that advice with some of our remaining patients and enough thank yous to make it honest. On the way out, we took bottled water, a case of saltine crackers, and 2 jars of peanut butter. No one touched the beer. Even if a little calm would have been welcome, it slows the part of your brain you need to keep moving. We used county roads for most of the day. In places, the rows of mailboxes had been tilted by a truck that ran the edge without looking. At a small bridge, we stopped because someone had put a log across the road. The log had chains, and the chains were fixed to a pickup in a willow stand with its hood up. The idea was simple. You stop. They step out of the brush. They ask for help. They say they need fuel or a tow. They tell you there are kids. Then you are within reach. We don't stop, I said. We loop around the field if the ground is dry enough. It was. We left a path through someone's grass that I would have felt bad about last week. We waved at the men by the willow. They stared like the world had stepped around them on purpose. Maybe it had. Past late afternoon, the sky took on the flat brightness that says evening is coming quick. A wind farm showed up along the horizon, white towers spaced like mile markers, blades making a slow, deliberate turn. I've always liked wind turbines in the middle distance. They are machines doing their work without asking you to look at them for approval. We took a gravel road toward them and found a field access cut where the track ran between 2 stands of scrub. It was high enough that we could see the 1/4 mile to the county road. It was low enough that we would not be a lighthouse. We stop here, I said. We eat. We rest. We keep watch in shifts. We touch nothing we don't need. Nora spread the blanket. Abby sat with the peanut butter jar and a spoon and handled it with the seriousness of a task. Marcus stayed busy with the Kenworth. He checked the air dryer purge. He tapped the fuel water separator and cracked the drain for a second to see if we had picked up any water from the last top-off. It ran clean. He looked toward the west, toward Kansas City, and then looked down again because looking too long at the distance can make you trip on the next step. We ate silently for a while. The quiet felt human again. The way the quiet at a picnic feels when the park is large and you have found your own table. After, Nora used the battery lantern to check a cut on Abby's knee that had been covered by denim. She cleaned it and taped a sterile pad and said nothing about bravery or fear. She treated it like a thing that needed doing. "Tell me what you saw," I said to Nora, when Abby had fallen into sleep with a hand on the jar as if it might escape. I asked because in tools and engines and people, information keeps you alive. She kept her eyes on Abby. We had a surge at the emergency department 3 days ago. People with fevers, then with confusion, then with aggressive movements. We sedated, restrained, ventilated. We called for transfer to the main campus. The transfer never happened. The ones we sedated would slow, then stop, then the monitors would flatline. We would call time, and then after minutes that were not the normal shape, some of them would move again. Calm at first, then not calm. Some of us tried to talk to them. The words made no difference. The only thing that made a difference was distance and barriers. So we made distance with gurneys and chairs, and we made barriers with doors. She swallowed. When the power went down to a single generator, we lost suction. We lost oxygen in rooms. That was yesterday morning. They asked us to keep working. We did until we couldn't keep people safe just by being present. I signed out. I went to my sister's house. Abby was there. My sister had gone to find her husband at his office. She did not come back. "I'm sorry," I said, because that was the input the moment wanted. "We'll keep Abby safe." "That's the plan," Nora said. She said it exactly like that. Not a hope, a plan. Marcus's voice came from the front step of the Kenworth. I heard that voice on the radio again. The mile marker guy. He said 143 and again said not to stop at dusk by the fields. Same cadence, like he's parked there with his radio, and that's the line he says to anyone who gets near. Maybe he is, I said. Maybe he thinks it helps, and maybe it does. The sky went from steel to dark. The wind had a cutter's edge to it. We rolled the trailer door up high enough to climb in and left it tied at that height for airflow. We set watches, Marcus first, then me, then Nora, with Abby tucked behind a stack of folded pallet blanks. In the middle of the night, a light showed on the county road and moved like a bicycle headlamp. It approached, stopped at our access road, and after a long pause, kept moving. Good choices were still happening somewhere. In the early morning, we moved again. It is easy to read that and think there is heroism in the simple act, but it was really just inertia with thought applied carefully. We chose a line of travel that would take us through farm grids to a larger state route with signs that said Terre Haute 120, Indianapolis 175. The distances were wrong for what the road felt like. That is an odd thing to say, but I mean this. Miles change shape when time stretches. You can know that 70 miles per hour equals a mile a minute, but if you cut that mile at 12 miles per hour in a stack of vehicles, your brain tells you you are not going anywhere, and it becomes hard to believe that the next town exists. By midday, the sky had a white arc where the sun struck haze. We reached a Love's travel stop by a cloverleaf where a county route crossed over the interstate. The parking lot held tractor trailers at angles. One had hit a concrete bollard and pivoted the bollard out of the ground. The store's automatic doors had been pushed open and were stuck that way. Inside, shelves were stripped of anything easy to carry. In a walk-in cooler, the air stayed cold because the insulation had not yet surrendered the night's worth of chill, and I caught a whiff of oranges that made me think of packing lunches before school. On a counter near the register, a flare gun sat with a spent cartridge in it. The trigger spring had snapped and was hanging loose. I have fixed those springs. I know what it had cost someone not to have one. The Citizens band bass set behind the counter still had power because someone had wired it to a car battery with a trickle panel propped in the window. I twisted the volume knob. Static hissed. Then a voice cut through, close. If you're westbound, don't stop past mile marker 143. They come out of the cornfields at dusk. The voice sounded like a man who had repeated the line so many times it had become how he named the day. I keyed the microphone. Copy on 143. What's your 20? That is how you ask where someone is without saying where you are first. Static. Then, mile 142.6. South side ditch. White box truck. I stay low. They move when the light goes red. They follow hum. If you can hear the wind, you can take 10 seconds at a time for fuel. If you cannot hear the wind, you can take 5. Do not take 6. The radio went quiet again, as if he had given away something and needed to pay for it in silence. We did not linger. We pulled a few gallons of diesel from a maintenance drum behind the store after checking for water with a clear jar. We stripped the shelves of items that would last. Peanut butter, crackers, instant oatmeal, a box of nitrile gloves, a pallet of bottled water that we did not take because the weight would cost us more in fuel than we would gain in hydration. We took a few bottles. We left the rest for the next person who might keep their head. We did not shoot any flares. Back on the state route, we ran parallel to the interstate where we could look down at it from an overpass. The highway was motionless. Cars sat like museum pieces. In the distance, I saw military vehicles, green Humvees with winch bumpers, and a medium tactical vehicle with a canvas back arranged across the lanes. I thought of the word blockade and then corrected myself to checkpoint because words mattered. Then I corrected myself again. Whatever they had intended, it was now just a collection of equipment with no one standing where the plan had put them. We debated going down to it. There would be supplies. There would be radios with broader reach. There would be maps, batteries, first aid kits. There would also be the thing that had made those supplies ownerless. Curiosity can be a trap disguised as a virtue. We stayed on the bridge. By late afternoon, we We found an access road that bent us back toward the interstate at a gap in a line of woods. The Kenworth fit, but its mirrors brushed branches. On the other side, the scene arranged itself like the end of a long equation that had always led here. Vehicles angled, a scorched section of asphalt where something had burned, shells of tires where they had melted, and uniforms that no longer had people in them. We saw cartridges swept to one side. Someone had tried to keep their footing by clearing brass. We saw a radio handset on the ground with its cord cut. We saw a note on a cardboard box written in black marker. To anyone, take what you need. Do not leave us on the road. There were sleeping bags under the overpass. I did not lift them to look. That was respect as much as it was prudence. We took one first aid kit, 2 canteens, and a roll of caution tape because we could use it to mark paths for ourselves at night, so we would know which way led to our own vehicle when our circles of light got small. We took a hand pump that a soldier had used to draw fuel from a barrel. We did not take weapons we did not know how to use, because adding complexity under stress is not bravery, it is how you make more problems. The last radio broadcast we heard that day came over the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration weather radio frequency as a civil emergency message. It was read by the same calm voice. National routes are compromised. Shelter in place. Trust no one. The last sentence had the shape of something added by a person who had decided to say a true thing instead of a technically correct thing. We left the interstate for good that evening. The wind turbine field looked like the inside of a clock in slow motion. We pulled the Kenworth onto a farm access turnoff beneath one of the towers, where the hum felt like a heartbeat rather than a siren. I eased myself down onto the grass at the edge of the gravel. The grass pressed flat under my palm. It smelled like dust and chlorophyll. The colours in the sky were the kind that make people take pictures on normal days. On this one, no one thought to raise a phone. Nora sat on the Kenworth step and looked at the horizon as if it might answer. Abby leaned against her, thumb hooked in a belt loop, the way she had learned to keep from being pulled away by a crowd. Marcus stood with his hands on his hips and his eyes on the truck as if being ready still needed a shape. I thought the highway would save us, I said, not to make a point, but to say aloud the sentence that had filled the last 2 days. Turns out it only showed us how far the world had already gone. We did not leave the highway, Nora said. We changed what we mean by it. The line we follow is the one with the fewest people and the most options. That is a better definition, I said. We'll use it tomorrow. We made a small camp that did not look like a camp if you were not looking for one. We parked the truck in a way that let us roll with gravity if we needed to move without starting the engine. We set the battery lantern inside the trailer where its light could not be seen from the road. We ate crackers and peanut butter because it required no heat and made no smell that travelled far. We drank water with measured sips and preserved the rest in the cool of the trailer. We spoke quietly. We did not tell stories about the past to make ourselves feel better. We did not make promises about the future. We set the first watch and slept in the turns that were left. In the morning, the plan continued, because plans are how people keep from becoming random. West would still be a word, so would quiet, so would height, so would distance. Each sign we passed would have a number on it, and even if the numbers had stopped meaning what they used to mean, they still counted in a way that held us together. We found a farm tank behind a machine shed that had a padlock as old as the paint on the door. The lock was not what kept anyone safe. We opened it and bled off 2 pints from the bottom of the tank into a glass jar to check for water. No distinct layer settled. We pumped 10 gallons into cans and left a note pinned under a stone with the amount we had taken and our thanks. It was not likely anyone would read it. It was equally likely that the act would keep us straight. We crossed a county line where the road changed from smooth to patched. We avoided a town where the propane company yard had its gates open and its tanks still stenciled full, because that sight draws more than us. We saw a family on a porch who waved, and we waved back, but did not slow. Abby counted wind turbines as if they were lighthouses. For a long stretch, The only sounds were the diesel and the tyres, and the soft tumble of gravel under our sidewalls when we went to the shoulder to give a cyclist more room. A hawk rode a thermal like a thing with a plan. When we turned back north toward the interstate by a route I chose, because it had the fewest intersections and the most fields, I recognized an exit sign far ahead. 142B. In a normal week, I had met customers at that exit to pick up parts. Now it was the edge of a world we would not re-enter. I did not say that out loud. I did not need to. We all read the same sign. We did not rejoin the interstate. We paralleled it at a distance that let us see, and we used the wind turbines as our landmarks, and we named our stops by the sounds we heard there, instead of by their mile markers. The open road had lost its promise. That was not a reason to lose ours. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.